Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de whether dollar cost averaging is all that it's cracked up to be. And frankly, I'll spill the beans right now because it's not the what that's important, but the why. So yeah, I think dollar cost averaging is mostly BS. So stay tuned so I can give you my arguments as to why that's the case. Hey, XenPuck here. Another day, another random topic that I think can use a more definitive opinion on, okay? You know, that's one thing that really irks me about most news takes on hot topics. People just talk about the pros and cons and really refuse to take a definitive position on anything, especially in the realm of personal finance. I mean, I get it in a way, right? Everyone's situation is different and different strategies may fit those different circumstances. But still, any opinion maker is just an individual, right? Like myself. So I can't really be a stand-in for every single person on the planet, right? Just for the group that can empathize with, well, the speaker. So I don't dawdle the day away with middling BS, I promise, right? So for anyone interested in investing, dollar cost averaging seems like a reasonable, sensible thing to do. It just means that if you have a lump sum of money, instead of putting into the market in one stroke, that'd be lump sum investing, you divide your pot of cash into many equal increments and invest them at a set period of your own choosing, say every month or every year or every week, whatever you want, right? This way the convention wisdom goes, you don't have to worry about timing the market since you'll get multiple entry points over time. I'll link one of these common pros and cons lists about dollar cost averaging in the description below and make my comments about these particular points, right? Mostly about the pro points, because I'll get to why I think dollar cost averaging is a con, right? Number one, first of all, one of the article's definition of dollar cost averaging is actually just entirely beside the point, right? They talk about how it's consistently investing over time. But dollar cost averaging isn't just about that. It's about doing so at the expense of putting a much larger lump sum into the investment immediately, right? I am absolutely all for investing consistently over time. That's the likely scenario for most people. Let's face it, when we're working for a paycheck, we simply do not usually have a lump sum to invest to begin with, right? So slow and steady on a frequent and consistent basis when it comes to investing is obviously good, not arguing that. But my point is, doing so when you have the option of a large lump sum is not the preferable strategy. Studies have shown that basically, if given the chance, lump sum investing will produce better returns 75% of the time. I mean, that's good enough for me over a long enough period, right? The main issue here is that market fluctuation over the short term simply shouldn't matter if you're actually investing instead of speculating, meaning that you're investing into assets that are already diversified and also over a period of at least 5, but ideally over 10 years, right? If that's the case, the fluctuations within a few months or even a year or two will always end up being irrelevant. So if and when you have a surprise lump sum to invest, such as like real estate sale or inheritance, better just do it immediately instead of being a chicken. Problem solved, good lord. Now, point 2. Let me refute what Investopedia thinks are the pros of dollar cost averaging, right? One of the ones that I really dislike is it avoids bad timing, okay? So it'd be bad timing if you somehow literally pick the time to lump sum invest at the absolute peak of the market, right? But this lacks context. The peak of the market for what period of time? A year, a decade, a lifetime? Because over a long enough period, remember, markets has always risen. Because, you know, inflation alone will do that, right? So like I mentioned earlier, if you picked a diversified fund to invest in, this avoidance of bad timing is a moot point if your time horizon is actually long enough. Now, if you're thinking, oh, what if the value of my investment drops in the short term? Then I'd say money in the short term should not be in the market at all, right? You would not be speculating, not investing, okay? So point refuted. Now, point number 3. The other pro is even sillier. Investopedia basically says that dollar cost averaging is supposed to remove the emotional element out of investing because you're on a set schedule. But here's the reality, right? Like if you're doing lump sum investing, you do have to make a decision at one moment in time to go all in. And that's scary, right? You're doing so with a large chunk of money, I get it. But one decision and you're done. Now let's compare that to the reality of dollar cost averaging, right? Instead of one decisions, now you're faced with, let's say, at least 12 monthly decisions, right? I think that's a pretty common schedule. So people, what they do is they instead of lump sum at one given moment in time, they say, hey, I'll do 1/12 every month for about a year, right? But here's the thing. If you're doing so over the period of a year, you have 12 different moments in time to question your own decision, to be freaked out by the news, on the wider economy, to again want to second guess whether Monday of this week the market was too high and your investment too expensive, maybe wait until Wednesday or Friday. You get my point? The longer someone holds on to a larger amount of cash, the more choices he or she will feel like that they have. And sometimes having an abundance of choice or an overabundance of choice is bad. All that it'll lead to is indecision and probably worse decisions. How having even more decision points is supposed to take the emotional element out? Totally beyond me. Okay. And finally, right, I really want to touch on my own personal experience with lump sum investing rather than dollar cost averaging, right? Because that's what I choose to do, right? Mainly this choice comes out whenever I get bonuses or have just sold a property, right? At least back when I used to have a job, I'd get bonuses, right? All of a sudden I'm flush with cash, mostly likely in the low six figures. Now, I can't say if I do the same if my cash amount was, say, a lot bigger, let's say in the multiple millions. Don't know, not there, right? But my evidence are all from my personal life. So for amounts in the hundreds of thousands, yep, you know what I do? I just dump it in a well-diversified fund as soon as I can. I mean, do I look for minor diffs so I feel like I'm getting a good deal? Sure, I am human after all. But the thing is, let's say if I waited a week and the price keeps going up, I won't wait any longer. I would just buy all in, because mentally I tell myself, so I'm not getting anything on sale, but at least the trend is looking up, right? On the flip side, often right after I buy, maybe a day or two later, or maybe even a week later, I think usually, because when you just put in a large sum, you check it often, right? And it has dipped in the short term before. Oh my, is that discouraging? No, not really, because remember, this is money that I don't need for at least a decade, right? So yeah, I would just let it ride, and guess what? Maybe within a few days, let's say a handful of days, it has dipped after I bought with a large sum. It's like, you know, over 100 grand, and it's kind of depressing when you see that. But over the next few years, every single one of my lump sum investment has done well, actually. Often better, by the way, than my individual picks. So rest assured, personal anecdotes tells me that it works. And actual research, like the 75% of the time the lump sum works better than dollar cost averaging, also tells me that it works. So it's lump sum that works, not dollar cost averaging. DCA just gives you the illusion of control because it allows the cowardly investor to go in slower, okay? I mean, that's totally fine, by the way. It's not a problem. It exists because if you're just starting out, if you're a beginner on investments, you should totally do that until you get comfortable, right? You got to get past that initial kind of anxiety about investing, you know, money and just generally managing money, right? But after that period, I would seriously suggest to just grow some balls and get into the market. After all, time in the market always beats trying to time the market, right? This is an old cliche, but as far as I can tell, it has worked out perfectly for me, right? And I'm retired, so. Anyway, do you think I'm off my rockers? Have you had some amazing first-hand experience to the contrary, where your dollar cost averaging ways somehow saved your hide? Would love to hear it and learn something from your experience as well, right? Cheers. I'll approach it.